Live. Got my favorite mug here. It says PCOS is effing bullshit, would not recommend. Okay, I am so pumped for today's live and the topic that we are discussing. We're going to wait for Dr. Nadolsky to pop in here. There we go. He's already here. Till he connects. Welcome in, everyone. This is exciting. I cannot wait to chat today. Hi.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. I'm going to turn my camera up a little bit. How are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good. Thank you for coming. Where are you
I'm
located?
in Michigan.
Michigan? Okay, cool. I was there in May I was in Detroit for a wedding.
Oh, where are you now?
Yeah. I'm in Southern Oregon.
Oh, that's far. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. I sent you some of the questions that I was getting asked about GLP-1 medication, and I don't know. I just thought we could do a big Q&A. Anyone feel free to ask a question in the comment box. Please ask questions, but I just feel like there is so much noise about this medication and so many myths out there. I would love to address those with you. I feel like you're a great person to talk to. You've spoken up about the medication a lot in sort of the weight management space. So yeah, before we start though, please tell everyone watching who maybe isn't following you yet who you are, a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a board certified family medicine physician. Then specialize in obesity medicine and something called lipidology, the study of like cholesterol, and kind of made this niche of cardiometabolic medicine specialty. It doesn't exist. They're trying to make it exist, but that's kind of what I do.
That's awesome.
I've also gotten into kind of innovative healthcare delivery systems. So I'm really big on telemedicine as one of those things in residency. So you go through medical school, you do something called residency where you do your specialty and you start actually seeing patients.
Yep.
And it was an archaic way of treating people because it was like you get 5 to 10 minutes with a patient, you don't get to do the lifestyle stuff,
Right.
and then they're gone, and then you don't see them for a month or two. So, and I was doing like Facebook Lives during lunch, and I'd be like, I felt like I helped more people during that than I helped in the whole day of seeing patients. So I got really into telemedicine, and so this whole thing, like, you have a ton of followers, and we have over 100 people on this right now that will probably learn way more than telemedicine. That's right,
Yeah.
on the pen, Dave.
Telly.
Telly.
On
I
the
call it the
telly.
telly.
I love it.
Someone put it up on the telly. So that's
Yeah.
that's me in a gist. I'm a big lifestyle medicine advocate, but I'm also really high on these GLP-1 medicines simply because they help people do the things that they have been told to do, but just struggle to do them in the past. So
I love hearing that.
that's a bit of just about me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear another perspective, on my page aside from me just kind of yapping about it. So that's why I wanted to have you on. So there's a lot, I think I first want to address a lot of the misconceptions that we hear about GLP-1 medications. What are some that you feel like you have to fight against frequently?
Yeah, that it's made only for those with type 2 diabetes,
Mm.
that they're brand new. So they're
Yeah,
approved both for obesity and for type 2 diabetes. And I know there's a lot of people asking, like, what about PCOS? What about binge eating disorder?
right.
And anecdotally, we see some of the greatest effects in those patients from these drugs. Having said that, they need to study it in order to get what's called that FDA indication
Right.
so that it's on the label so that you can go, hey, this person doesn't necessarily fit these BMI criteria, but
Right.
this person can get great benefit. So it just needs to be studied, but we do see a lot of benefit in those patients.
Totally.
So not just type 2 diabetes. So prescribing these drugs doesn't take it away from those with type 2 diabetes. Those with obesity and other related comorbidities get a lot of benefit from them. So it's not just taking away from anybody. It's just they're good for a lot of different people. Thanks, Paul. Glad you're looking at
Hi,
my
Paul.
memes.
Yes,
Glad you're
memes.
looking at
We
my
love
memes.
a good meme.
They're also not new. They were the first one that came out was called Bayetta in 2005. exenatide. It was a twice a day injection. It had a little bit of weight loss, but it was made for, that one was approved for only type 2 diabetes.
Got
So
it.
these been studied for over 2 decades now.
Wow.
Um, other misconceptions that they're going to cause cancer. There's been some studies looking at maybe a reduced incidence of cancer from these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it from a perspective like adipose or fat tissue,
Right.
that makes sense.
Right. It does.
There is a black box warning for thyroid cancer on the label. It's a specific type of thyroid cancer called medullary thyroid cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and it arises from these specific cells in the thyroid called C cells. And they saw a signal in rats, the hypertrophy of those C cells
Hmm.
in rats from the drug, and come to find out that rodents have more readily receptors of these GLP-1 receptors on those cells, whereas humans do
Interesting.
not.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't been found in humans. There have been some mixed studies looking back at, like, they do these post surveillance type of studies where, like, all right,
Yeah.
they didn't see anything in the trials
Right.
when they put it up against a placebo, but then they want to monitor people afterwards, and it looks like there's no increase. Some studies showed some increase, then some others didn't. But when you put it all together, it doesn't seem to be an increase of that.
Okay.
So let's see, other
Great to know.
misconceptions.
Yeah.
Other, yeah,
Gastro.
misconception. Yeah, go. Whatever. What do you say? Gastroparesis,
Yep.
stomach paralysis.
Yep.
So
Hear that one a lot.
that's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not shown in any of the trials, but sometimes those trials are thousands of people. When
Right.
you get tens of hundreds and millions of people, now all of a sudden maybe you start seeing things that were so rare that you pick things up.
Right.
Having said that, the drug, one of the drug's physiologic effects, and this is our own GLP-1 too that we make.
Mm-hmm.
So just to go back, we make our own GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1 from our intestines,
Mm-hmm.
and it's broken down within minutes. So these drugs, they were designed to not be broken down so quickly.
Okay.
And so, but one of the effects of the GLP-1 is slowing of gastric emptying. So
Right.
how well your stomach starts emptying the contents into your intestines. So when people are like, "Oh, it paralyzes your stomach," well, no, it does actually slow down the way your stomach works. It actually, that effect wanes over time. So
Mm-hmm.
at first, when you first start taking it, it's a much more prominent effect, and over time, it starts going away.
Yes.
I, I've never seen anything permanent. There's nothing been in the trials, but there are, like, people suing the big pharmaceutical companies
Mm-hmm.
randomly. Like, some people have this permanent, what they call gastroparesis,
Mm-hmm.
which is the more technical term of stomach paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People with type 2 diabetes have a higher risk of gastroparesis or stomach paralysis,
Okay.
the colloquial term.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that, and there's other causes of it. There's autoimmune causes. It's possible that these people had it brewing and this kind of knocked them over into it. It's hard
Right.
to know, but
Right.
I will say it's not something we shouldn't just worry about, but it's so
It's
rare.
so rare.
It's not anything that's even come up in the trials, but should be studied.
Totally.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Pancreatitis, people talk about pancreatitis.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was a concern at first because the GLP-1 has an effect on the pancreas that actually helps preserve your pain. So with those with type 2 diabetes, they're what they're called, their beta cells that make that insulin start kind of
Right.
teetering out. So the GLP-1 agonists actually help preserve them. And so there's a concern of, like, maybe they'll increase pancreatitis. Well,
Right.
over all the trials they've put together, and they've compared it to a placebo, and there doesn't seem to be a statistically significant effect. Having said that, they do increase the risk of gallstones, and this
Mm-hmm.
might be from rapid weight loss. You may have
Mm-hmm.
talked about this before, but when you
Mm-hmm.
people when people lose weight rapidly, whether they're on the medicine or not,
Right.
they have a change in their mixture of their bile, and
Mm-hmm.
when you change that, it can increase the risk of forming those stones in your gallbladder.
Right.
And one of the risks of having gallstones, not only a gallbladder attack, but the stone can get into the wrong place and start causing a pancreatitis.
Mm.
So you do see it once in a while.
Got it.
Again, rare and very, can be life threatening. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's something we monitor,
Yep.
of course.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
Most
Thank you.
common side effect. nausea by far,
Right.
it's nausea.
Yep.
Mild to moderate for most, can be moderate to severe for a small subset. For most people, it resolves over
Hmm.
time. Every time you go up in the dose, and there's two major ones. There's semaglutide out there, and that's what people know as Ozempic,
Yes.
and that's the type 2 diabetes branded version. Then there's
Hmm.
Wegovy, which is
Hmm.
for obesity, and then there's tirzepatide, which is actually a GLP-1 slash GIP agonist, co-agonist drug. And that one, Mounjaro is the type 2 diabetes, and
Zepbound, right?
Zepbound for
Right.
obesity.
Hmm.
So you start at the lowest dose, and some people get some nausea. And then some people other get nausea only when they get to the higher dose. But again,
Hmm.
over the course of that month that they're on it, it's a 4-week regimen until you go up to the next dose.
Hmm.
Um, it's most people have it resolved by the end of that.
Right.
Once in a while, you have some people that just can't tolerate it,
That's true
even
for
when you do.
every drug, I
Yeah.
feel like, it's not going to be perfect for every single person.
Yep.
That's kind of a unreasonable ask. Yeah.
Ways to minimize it. As a dietitian, you've probably seen people on
Yeah.
it. I'll be
Yeah.
interested to see what you've seen,
Yeah.
but lighter meals, like it's really those heavier meals that people are like, well, I'm going to go try to eat some pizza now, um, and
Right.
it's so heavy in their stomach, it makes them feel really nauseous. So
Yeah.
lighter meals is kind of obvious stuff. Um,
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen anything like that or given any
Yeah.
recommendations to patients or
Hmm.
anything, but
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of things that we can do to mitigate, some of those side effects like nausea. Yeah. Lots of things. You're not stuck with that forever and ever.
yeah,
Yeah.
constipation is probably the next one that we see.
Hmm.
It's either reflux or constipation, but I would say constipation,
Hmm.
that can be minimized from the
Yes.
standard things. Lots of fluids,
Hmm.
lots of fiber,
Hmm.
and lots of physical activity.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
easier said than done, but
Yeah.
we tend to see a lot of improvement there. And then reflux,
Yes.
especially with people with a history of reflux.
Yeah.
Again, those smaller, lighter meals, sitting upright,
Hmm.
all those standard kind of lifestyle things, and that can be
Right.
really annoying because the drug's working so well, but they're like, it's just burning. I'm like,
Sure.
ugh,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely got to make some tweaks. Yeah, I think one of the things I hear a lot about GLP-1s is, well, what about the side effects? And I want to remind us that most every medication can have a side effect. That doesn't mean that you're going to experience it, and it doesn't mean they're going to last forever. And also, that's not a reason to not consider something at all just because there are side effects. There are so many, life-saving medications out there that have side effects, and that the benefit outweighs that. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I hear just kind of in summary about these medications is there are side effects. Yes, there are, potentially. And another thing that I would love to talk about is the weight regain post coming off of them. And kind of the area that I come at it with is that there are, of course, dietary and lifestyle changes that what we can be doing alongside taking these medications that help make that transition off of them, more sustainable in terms of your the weight that you've lost. So, yeah, I love that you posted something about that. Of course, if you stop dieting and exercising when you're losing weight, the weight, you can regain that weight. It's the same principle.
yeah.
So, yeah, just wanted to know
Yeah.
any of your
So yeah,
thoughts on that.
that's probably one of the most common things, and that's where a lot of people are like, oh, gotcha. You say I have to stay on these medicines long
Hmm.
term, and it's kind of like,
Right,
yeah, but you have to stay on like usually antihypertensive
right.
medicines long term or any other
Hmm.
medicine. And the
Right.
thing is, yeah, you could potentially, if you get your lifestyle in order, maybe reduce your blood pressure and maybe be able to keep it off. But a lot of
Hmm.
people, they've done that already. They take the blood pressure medicine, it finally lowers their blood pressure.
Hmm.
It would be like the doctor getting there after a few months and the doctor going, all right, well, your blood pressure is normal. Let's take you off this. Having said that,
Right.
some people don't want to be on these medicines long term. They're expensive. Insurances aren't
Hmm.
paying. There's shortages.
Hmm.
You can't get them in certain at certain points. So like,
Right.
you want to have that
Want to have
option.
a plan. Yeah.
They've done some really cool studies where they put everybody on the medicine, everybody's going down. And then what they do is they re-randomize part of those people to a placebo then once they've all lost the weight
Oh, wow.
while keeping the other people on. And you see the other people that stay on
Yeah.
continue to lose weight or keep it off.
Right.
And then you see the other group that got randomized to a placebo, most of them start regaining the weight, but not everybody starts regaining
Mm-hmm.
the weight. And when they
Mm-hmm.
start digging down into the subsets, it looks like around like 15 or so percent of people can lose the weight with them and then keep it off. So
Yeah.
you'll see one group of people saying, nope, obesity is a chronic disease. Everybody's got to take the medicine forever. And then other
Mm.
people are like, no, these should be used for short term
Mm-hmm.
only. And it's like, okay, well, why don't we just look at what the data shows and go like,
Yes.
actually, some people can come off. Majority will likely have to stay on, and not
Mm-hmm.
everybody will have to stay on the highest dose.
Mm-hmm.
What we're seeing, and again, this needs to be studied, but what we're seeing is some people can kind of come down to a lower dose and even space out their doses.
Yes, I've
Um,
seen that.
and some of this is just creative because of the costs and the shortages and insurance coverages where people are like,
Right.
hey, like I can't take this every week or I can't even get the drug. So then we
Right.
start messing around with this isn't FDA approved, so hopefully the FDA doesn't come after me for saying this or whoever, but
Yeah.
you start injecting it instead of every 7 days, it's every 10 days or 12
Right.
days and start spreading it out a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's what some people are able to do.
I've actually talked to several dietitians who have been on GLP-1s, and that is the best way for them to kind of take a break and come off of it, is they just come off of it really slowly rather than just quitting everything cold turkey. And they have found that to be far better in terms of, some of the cravings, food noise coming back, appetite coming back, and then weight regain.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's a lot of space to explore how to transition off of them in the best way possible. And I definitely look forward to learning more about that. Talk to us about this concept of food noise. It's
Yeah.
something that so many of us struggle with, especially, I work in the PCOS world, and we really, a lot of us struggle with that. So
Yeah.
how do GLP-1 specifically work around food noise? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I told you or if anybody tells you exactly how they work in that regard. But
Yeah.
I'll just kind of go over what people describe food noise as.
Yes, please.
So a lot of patients describe hunger. You're just
Right.
hungry. You want a second helping, even if it's the healthiest vegetables and chicken breast and fish or whatever,
Yeah.
even the most satiating feeling, you're still hungry. You want a second helping. So, okay, the GLP-1s help with that. They
Hmm.
also help with satiety. They also help with cravings. And cravings is thinking of like a specific, like, ooh, I could go for a piece of chocolate right now with some peanut butter. That's what I usually crave. I
Hmm.
go from salty and sweet to sometimes salty and
Hmm.
crunchy, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a specific craving. Food noise, what people describe it as, is just constant thoughts about food.
Right.
It doesn't have to be anything specific. It's not hunger. They just ate. They're not hungry. They're thinking about their next meal, when
Hmm.
they're going to eat it, how much it's going to be, all those different things.
Right.
And I think a lot of that plays into some of the anxiety and bad relationships you see around food.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
something
Hmm.
about the GLP, now these GLP-1s, someone mentioned it in there. They don't just help with the insulin, and I can explain how they work with the insulin. It's kind of a cool way it works. But in terms of like this food noise and satiety, there are these regions of the brain that have these GLP-1 receptors,
Mm.
and something's clearly going on because then what people also describe is that, wow, I don't actually crave or want alcohol anymore.
Yes. Thank you. I was just going to ask about that. I think that's
Yes.
fascinating. Yeah.
We've got some studies, and there's some new studies coming out. There's going to be some actual trials coming out on that,
So cool.
gambling, all sorts of
Yes.
things. So it's clearly dampening pleasure. There's something called the reward center in our brain. There's
Hmm.
clearly some dampening going on there.
Yeah.
But then the food noise aspect, like, well, people talk about feeling such a relief now. They don't feel like their world revolves around food anymore,
Right.
and it's such a relief for them. And again, I wouldn't be able to say exactly how it works, but these
Yeah. Just kind
drugs,
of silences it.
it's it's brought it to attention because people didn't even know they struggled with it before
Right.
until they took the drug and oh my God, I this must be what people that don't struggle with their weight must feel like, because I'm not constantly thinking about food.
Yes,
And so,
totally.
um, fascinating stuff. So I did some just very non IRB approved surveying of like people on of my social media followers, and
Yeah.
some people noticed some food noise improvement with the bariatric surgery. There's some other older
Mm-hmm.
drugs. There's
Mm-hmm.
something called bupropion,
Mm-hmm.
naltrexone. It's called Contrave.
Yeah.
Um, there's Qsimia, which is phentermine and topiramate.
Yep.
They noticed some food noise improvements there, but with the GLP-1, specifically tirzepatide,
Okay.
people are just going like I posted an analogy yesterday. It was with the Matrix. It's such a
Okay. I
it's so
didn't see.
stupid, but you can go look at it. But it's essentially like when Neo's being told like by Morpheus.
Yeah.
Morpheus is he's like, what do you think? I'll be able to dodge bullets, and dodging bullets in this scenario would be like you go to a party and you're like, oh, I don't want to even get near the food table. You got to like stay away from the food. And when Morpheus is like, no, when you're the one, you won't have to dodge bullets. He just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
stops the bullets. And so the you were all of a sudden able to navigate this kind of obesogenic environment without having to like it. And I hate saying a cheat code because
Yeah.
like I don't want it to even
Right.
be like in that kind of
Yes.
in that context. But it totally rewires the brain to go like, all right, I don't need to have this anymore. There's literally an extra helping right in front of me. There's a donut, there's cookies, whatever the vice is, and you just go,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need to have it.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you see on Twitter and these people are
Yes.
like, I don't understand, just eat less, move more, just get in a calorie deficit, just put the cookie down.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you are people already know that. They're like
Yes.
it's
That's lazy advice. Yeah.
it's not helpful. Whereas the medicine just goes boom, and they go, oh wow, I can actually not have to have that. I
Yeah.
had to have it before.
Right.
Um, and so that's one of the misconceptions that, and oh, another misconception is that people are like, people are just taking these drugs and just so they can eat their donuts and whatever else. Maybe there are some people that do it, but like do that. But in general, what I see is that most people take the medicines, have already some semblance of what to do, and now they're able to do it.
Yes.
That's literally it.
Thank you. I
Tally,
love that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Tally says you're
Yes.
able to make better choices.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
what everybody says.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And someone brought that up to me. Oh, people taking these drugs are just, I see a bunch of them just going and eating candy. It's like, well, at the end of the day, we can't force someone. If they want to eat candy, they're going to eat the
Yeah,
candy. Why cannot force them to not do that? But if they're going to at least do that, and yet they're going to be at a healthy BMI and avoid increasing their risk of all kinds of other health conditions, I'd rather them do
yeah,
that. But the reality is that most people aren't just sitting around eating candy on this medication. That's just not. They're actually we see cravings lowered.
yeah,
We see better food choices being made because that loud food noise, the volume knob is being turned down.
yeah.
And I think that's so incredible. And yeah, I'm very interested on the sort of addiction space too in regards to that reward system. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's a lot of studies going on right now
Yeah,
that I just my sense is that in 5 to 10 years this is going to be approved for all sorts of things that
I hope
like
so.
just
Yeah,
from all the cool stuff that we're seeing. There are some other
yeah,
good questions you got. I can't
yeah.
remember them off the top
Yeah,
of
we
my
can
head if you know
scroll
them.
up here. There's a bunch. What, okay, we think we talked about that. Uh, these are people just kind of sharing experiences, which is really cool. I'm on, is it Mon or Mounjaro? I've heard of both. Okay,
Manjaro,
Mounjaro
Manjaro.
for binge eating and it's life changing.
Yes.
How do we find good compound pharmacies?
Yeah, the compounding thing. So in the beginning when the shortages happened, it looked like there were a bunch of compound pharmacies that were just like, all right, let's do this. So
Yeah.
it's technically legal for compounding pharmacies. It was actually people were like, how are they able to do this? So
Mm,
um, the thing is with compounding, the compounded versions, they're not FDA approved. That doesn't mean they're bad. It's
right.
just that that specific way they're manufactured, putting that together is not going to be the same way, or you don't know if it's the same way that an FDA approved manufacturer does it.
Okay.
Now, having said that, there are a lot of places doing it now that actually get a very the active ingredient, the active pharmaceutical ingredient,
Hmm.
and they're putting it in these vials, and it looks exactly like it would look as if you sent off Ozempic versus the compounded semaglutide to an analyzer, a chemistry analyzer place
Okay.
that puts it through a few different types of ways to analyze it.
Okay.
Um, it's if I were so if I've never prescribed a compounded version. If I were, and I might, because a lot of my patients are asking for it. But
Hmm.
um, what you want to look for what's called a 503B pharmacy,
Hmm.
and the reason is that is because it's an extra level of um, good manufacturing processes that they have. At
Got it.
503B, they're actually FDA, they're not FDA approved, but
Right.
they're more regulated by the FDA, and
Okay.
they go through
Cool.
more stringent manufacturer processes.
Cool.
And there's a few places out there, and what the 503B pharmacies can't send it directly for the patient. We're a
Hmm.
503A, so many people maybe have seen, like, you drive down the road and there's like a compounding pharmacy.
Hmm.
That's called that would be a 503A that you could get that from.
Okay.
But the 503Bs are a much bigger and more rigorously tested bunch. So that's what I would do personally.
Hmm.
But in every place, like, you can't attest to the safety of those places. Again, I don't. When you look at the anecdotes on Reddit and all these places that are getting a lot of compounded, I like lurking on Reddit and
Reddit.
seeing,
Yeah.
and like, it's not a good way to study because you get what's called a selection bias. You don't see the bad. So, like, if somebody died, they wouldn't be posting on Reddit anymore. So you see a lot of the highlights of all the good stuff, but most of the people on Reddit are like, oh, it feels just like the same way that if I took a Wegovy or Ozempic or Zepbound, Manjaro.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't advocate for or against, but I do think that, like, if I were personally to take one, I would do a 503B
Okay.
formulated version. Um,
Okay. That's good to
it's
know.
it's supposed to be essentially a copy,
Yes.
literally like the same exact
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. We get generic, versions of medication all the time. So, yeah. Okay. Good to know. Um,
Says, what do you think about staying on a microdose if you're losing weight? So yeah, like,
hmm.
honestly, like, if somebody's losing weight and they wanted to go on a lower dose and they're still doing well on it, like, what I don't see any harm in doing that. You could get into doses that aren't technically FDA approved, but, like, it's still having the effect. I don't
Yeah.
see any
Absolutely.
reason that that's not. Of course, I'm not your doctor, so always ask your own doctor for before you do anything.
Yes.
But I will say that I have patients where I put them on smaller doses.
Mhm. Great. Is there a greater risk when drinking alcohol if you're taking a GLP-1?
Uh, for, like, a pancreatitis. That
Oh,
was one of the concerns. So that's what people
yeah.
usually ask. Like,
Oh, got it.
I don't know
Oh,
if
does
that's
that
what they're
increase the
asking.
risk?
Increase the risk of something like pancreatitis. So
Okay.
not that I know of. What I actually see is that the drug works so well for people to drink less, that,
Right.
like, I'm like, heck yeah, let's put you on this drug, and then all of a sudden they start drinking less, and I actually have to
Right.
monitor them. I want to make sure they're not having withdrawals or something like that. Like, it could be, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they go from drinking like
Right.
6 or 8 uh
Yeah.
whatever servings of alcohol
Right.
per day, whether it's wine or
Yeah.
beer, to, like, 1 or 0. I'm like, okay, let me monitor you a
Yeah.
little bit closely here.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know of
Okay.
any data to show an increase. Like, if you were able to drink through the GLP-1, I don't know if there's an increased risk. I don't think it's been studied, but I've
Okay.
never seen it.
Okay. How long does it usually take to start seeing results?
Yeah, so it's different for everybody. Some people, even on the lowest dose, they're like, boom, 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 they're losing weight. It's not normal that people lose a ton of weight on the lowest dose, but some people notice right away.
Oh, Instagram.
Other people, it takes some getting up a few doses before they really start noticing it. But on
Okay.
average, most people will start noticing it within the first few weeks.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Do GLPs deflate your body? I feel like I lost muscle even with lifting.
Yes. So I've done a lot with this. I'm actually
Yeah.
I'm with my the new company that I'm launching a program. I want my chief science officer to be a body composition scientist. I want to actually study this, but I anecdotally I've promote lifting and lots of protein. Anecdotally, I've seen very little muscle loss.
Okay.
People get stronger. Once in a while, I'll see some people who have lost weight
Mm,
rapidly and they didn't lift weights and eat a lot of protein, and they don't have the DEXA scan to show it, but they kind of say the same thing. So, um, some people when you lose weight, about 25% or so is what they call like lean mass loss, and
mm-hmm.
that's not only it's not just muscle though. It could be water in fluid in your and there's other lean mass in our body that's can go down. Bone doesn't really go down that much in the short term
Mm-hmm.
period, but it's generally muscle and fluid. So with semaglutide, there was some subset studies that showed up to like 38 or 39% was lean mass. We don't know if it's muscle or not. It could be fluid or something else that's showing up on
Got
a
it.
DEXA.
Got it.
Tirzepatide was more like in that 25% range.
Mm-hmm.
And just anecdotally, again, I have patients that all of a sudden are getting stronger while on it. So the way that I minimize it,
Mm,
I try not to go above 1% total body weight loss per week. And when you
yes.
think about that, it ends up still a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you're 300 pounds.
Right.
That would be 3 pounds per week in the beginning.
Yeah,
That's
that's great.
1%. So
Great
when
loss.
somebody's like going more like in the beginning when you lose weight, you probably talked about this, but there's glycogen loss. So there can usually be this big fluid loss. So
Yes.
it's usually after the first couple of weeks, that's where we start really paying attention to that percentage.
Okay.
But let's say someone who's 300 pounds, they've already gone through that water loss
Mm-hmm.
phase, and they're losing like 6 pounds a week. Probably want to take it back a
Yeah.
few notches and
Yes.
and and not lose weight faster.
Yeah.
It's a bigger deal when you're leaner. The leaner you are already, and the faster you lose weight, the more at risk you're losing muscle.
Right.
If you have a lot of adipose tissue uh, in the beginning, let's say you're 600, like just 500 pounds, it's a lot of you have a lot of adipose. You
Mm-hmm.
can go at the higher rates without worrying about
Yes.
muscle loss.
Right.
But this is where when people start getting, it's usually compounded because usually it's not FDA approved for those who don't meet the criteria.
Right.
We see a lot of people using it for vanity weight loss purposes,
Right.
and I'm just like, look, you want to be careful in those cases. I wouldn't recommend
Yeah.
it, number one, but
Right.
you want to you want to be careful because if you start losing at that 1% down, if you're like 100, let's say you're 150 pounds
Right.
and you're relatively lean already and you
Mm-hmm.
start losing a couple pounds per week, you're going to be at risk for muscle loss,
And
absolutely.
that's true.
So
True even without
yeah,
medication, right? I mean, we could diet and exercise our way to that as well. It's not that the GLP-1s specifically are going in there, attacking and breaking down your muscle.
yeah,
It's the fact that you're losing quickly. So you just want to make, yeah, some adjustments. And also, you can also, for the bone, I hear a lot about the bone mineral density.
yeah,
Start strength training, start doing some
yeah,
resistance exercise, which should be doing that anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's right. I try to recommend I try to get my patients to do at least twice a week, kind of a full body, if not
Yeah.
more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Mm-hmm.
generally it's 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's still on the lower end because people are like, "Oh, I'm used to having a gram per pound of body weight," but it's like if you're 300 pounds,
Right.
like eating 300 grams of protein, that's pretty
That,
miserable. And even
yeah,
200 pounds, like 200 grams of, so
like
like
an IV
at
drip
least
of whey
yeah,
protein.
you should be
Straight
drinking
shake.
protein shakes all day with your meals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the standard of what I do. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. There was one question too that was asked quite a bit outside of, I haven't seen it yet on the live, but breastfeeding and GLP-1
Yeah.
medication, is that contraindicated?
Yeah,
What's the stance?
technically,
Okay.
it can
I
still get
figured
into
everything is when we're
yeah,
nursing and pregnant.
it can
Ah,
still get into breast milk. Like
yeah.
whether it's dangerous, they're just not messing around. Like
Yeah.
in the general guidance is 2 months prior to trying to conceive, you
Yes.
are off the medicine. And it's the medicines have like around it's somewhere between a 5 to 7 day half life.
Okay.
So it's not
Makes
just out
sense.
of your system in 7 days. It's just cut in half, cut in half, cut in half. So,
Yes.
over 2 months. Now, having said that, there's not any signals for harm in fetuses, but people are
Right.
just like,
Yeah.
we don't know. You don't know.
We never
You
want.
never know what's
Yeah.
gonna.
Yeah. Pregnancy, we're always like, everything's off limits.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
you don't want to mess
Um,
around.
there's a question about hair loss, and I know this is also prevalent in the PCOS community. We can struggle with hair loss with elevated testosterone and things like that. So, um, I mean, I can answer this one too. Anytime we lose weight really quickly, just like with bariatric surgery, it's not the surgery itself, it's not the GLP-1 medication itself that's causing hair loss. It's losing weight rapidly. So again, you're just going to want to make sure that you're going at a nice pace and not losing, 40 pounds in a month. So yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
that's that's the gist. It's the stress from losing weight.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything about the drug specifically that causes your follicles to, come out. But what we notice is that people get to the maintenance level and then stay there for a few months. They notice their hair is starting to come back. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so it's temporary. Oh, I was told that I was annoying because I was interrupting. Um, Sorry, guys. Thank you. I've only heard you have to stay on these medications forever. If a lifestyle change happens, can people get off and not end up at square one? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so what happens is that when people come off, I had mentioned this before, maybe we're not on, but about 15% or so are able to switch to a placebo. Again, they don't know they're on a placebo and they're able to maintain their weight off. So,
yeah.
and I've had plenty of patients come off the medicines and um, maintain their weight loss. Again, it goes back to the same things that we know about weight loss maintenance. So those who exercise the most, again, exercise isn't amazing for the actual weight loss. It helps a little bit with the weight loss, but for weight loss maintenance, because you're increasing your how much you can actually eat.
Right.
So lifting weights is a part of that, keeping your metabolism it'll help keep your metabolism a little bit higher. Um, don't want to overstate that because it's not as big as what people think, but like exercising a lot, eating volumes of food, it's the biggest thing that you're going to notice is that like if you had a lot of that food noise before, the food noise may come back. But
Hmm.
while you're on the medicine, if you did have like some poor dietary habits in the past, and not necessarily at your own fault, it's simply because your brain is kind of pushing you that way.
Hmm.
The drug rewires your brain to be able to redo some of those habits. So if you get into the habit of eating a certain dietary pattern that's more conducive to keeping the
Hmm.
weight off, and that's high volume, lots of protein, satiating type stuff. So if you get used to that, you come off the medicine. The biggest risk is like your appetite starts to come back, but if you can minimize it with the foods that you're eating,
Hmm.
that can help. Um, you get into the mode of exercising a lot.
Yeah.
When people have a lot of weight, they have a lot of knee pain,
Yes.
joint pain, and just overall don't feel great. Like even just walking up the stairs and things like that.
Mhm.
Yes, intelligent effluvium is what I was referring to with the stress. Just stress in general can cause your weight loss. So
Careless.
when keeping your weight off though, when coming off though,
Yeah.
here's what I've noticed. The people that have struggled with their weight like for most of their life, meaning they probably had a biological aspect to it, although I don't want to discount like childhood
Right.
adverse childhood events.
Right.
The stories that I hear are just kind of like I had to cope
Yeah.
with food because my parents got this divorce and it was nasty, blah 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 blah. I developed this,
Hmm.
but when you develop that as a child and you have it lifelong, it's different probably than like, hey, I I got divorced or there was a
Hmm.
pandemic in the past couple of years.
Hmm.
I just kind of got thrown off my usual habits and gained
Mm,
40 pounds or something like that.
right.
I think the latter group, the people that had some
Hmm.
life aspect, those people have a higher chance. Again, I'm just saying this anecdotally. This hasn't been studied. This is my own
Yeah.
anecdote. So I don't want people like Dr. Nadolsky says this. I don't want
Yes.
to take it as fact. I'm
Yes.
showing what I'm observing.
Got it.
Those people, I would bet, have a much higher chance of coming off the medicine than those who have struggled for their whole life and who have more of that what I'd call that biological drive, that food noise, that like
Hmm.
that drawn aspect to like they know what they're supposed to do. They just are really struggling from those
Right.
signals their brain is telling them to eat. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, it can be done though. I don't want to say it can't be done.
Yeah. There, someone that I talked to who has been on GLP-1 medication, she really, really struggled with that food noise, really loud food noise. And when she was on the medication, she was realizing how much she was using food as a coping mechanism, right? Like a lot of us can. And so once that was taken away, so to speak, she was actually able for the first time to see it, kind of like step outside of it and see it herself. And she started to think about what other coping mechanisms she could have because that one was sort of off the table for her,
Yeah, it's not
literally.
interesting.
So she started to exercise because she finally felt like she had some energy to do that, less joint pain, less knee pain. And she started to, what was the other thing that she started doing? She started doing some gratitude journaling, some different deep breathing exercises, and she really learned how to sort of sub that in and help her feel better. So once she was able to come off, or once she came off of the medication, she now had those coping mechanisms. Whereas before the medication, she would have never had the brain space to even think about them, to even consider them. So that was one way, that it really was life changing for her. Even though she's come off of it, she's been able to maintain because she's been allowed to kind of develop those other coping mechanisms. So I thought that was a really incredible story. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's exactly right. I think I hope there's a lot more studies in that.
Yes.
There are people, so there are other doctors that just that want people to come off the medicine. I'm like, well, they don't have to unless it's a financial reason or the patient really wants to.
Right.
So, it's actually even fighting doctors and they're like, well, like they're already at a normal BMI now. I'm like, yeah, but like that's what's keeping them there. And like, and
Yeah.
some doctors, right when they get to a 25 BMI, they're like, all right, let's get them off the medicine. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's literally the same thing as getting their blood pressure like a 110/70,
Right.
and you want to take them off the blood pressure medicine. It's like, what is going on here? So
Yeah.
shared decision making with the
Yes.
patient, like risk benefit, all those different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
s-
Totally. Yeah.
sweet, Sweet
Um,
Muscle wants to know if there's an update on bimagrumab.
yeah.
This is uh, a therapy that's a injection therapy. Well, it's actually started as IV. I think they're figuring out how to make it subcutaneous. It actually helps through a few mechanisms block your myostatin, which is one of the governors we have on muscle growth. So they
Mm,
give
okay.
this, and there's actually a few
Cool.
of these different drugs out there they're looking at because what they think the next frontier is basically the GLP-1, GIP, and even glucagon. There's some other crazy drugs coming down the line.
Right.
You add one of these other things that helps you at least not lose any muscle or even build muscle while you're losing the fat, increases your metabolism, improves your metabolic health because now you have more storage depot for all the glucose and fatty acids to use as fuel. Kind of interesting. No update as of right now. I think it's in phase 3 trials, but
Okay.
there's a few other drugs out there they're looking at this. Really interesting stuff. I'm skeptical because when they one of the studies that they did on this bimagrumab, they didn't show anybody actually increase despite increases in muscle,
Hmm.
they didn't show anybody got stronger or anything like
Hmm.
that. So like I don't
Interesting.
know. We'll
Yeah.
see. I'm skeptical. So for now, still lift weights, but maybe we'll have something cool. I'll be injecting bimagrumab, and the next time my neck will be like this, and, and you won't even be able to see my face.
I'll be like, who's that?
Yeah, who's this guy?
Question about not so someone commented, I don't overeat, but I can't get the scale to budge. Can GLP-1s be helpful for me?
Yeah.
And this
So
person has PCOS and endometriosis.
yeah, in some of these cases, I like to look at the patient because like sometimes patients are like, I can't lose weight. I'm like, oh no, you actually probably shouldn't lose weight. So
Mm,
it depends on the person. So
got it.
let's put out some hypotheticals
Right.
out there. Let's say I mean you get into PCOS. So there's patients who are lean,
Yeah.
who are pretty lean, who have
Hmm.
PCOS. So in that
Yep.
person, I wouldn't necessarily want them to lose any weight. I would
Right.
manage their symptoms in other ways,
Yes.
whether it's pharmaceutical or not.
Yes.
But let's say the patient had PCOS but had obesity as
Mhm.
well. The medicine can absolutely help in those cases, and in some cases in PCOS, there's an inflammatory process going on in the brain. It dysregulates the appetite, and while some people feel like they're not eating a lot, even the medicine can help reduce that eating a little bit more to uh,
Mhm.
where you do start seeing the weight loss. I will say the tirzepatide, the GIP component, has an impact on insulin sensitivity more than the GLP-1.
Mhm.
So it may be that might be a little bit more beneficial in that case. Has
Okay.
to be studied again. But
Okay.
yeah, in those with PCOS and struggling with their weight, again, assuming they're not lean, they have weight to lose.
Mhm.
um, I see just a massive benefit. People, and it's not just like the appetite too. There's like
Yeah.
their joints feel
Oh,
better.
yeah.
Again, this is all anecdotal stuff, but like they can feel that overall inflammatory feeling is just alleviated.
Yeah. I love that. That's really cool. Someone's asking about cholesterol,
Yeah.
lowering cholesterol.
Yeah, so the drugs, these ones right now have an effect on improving the lipoproteins that carry more of the triglycerides. And this gets into a lot of lipidology. It can get really confusing. But let's just say these drugs will help. They can help lower your cholesterol a little bit from the weight loss, but they'll really help with the triglycerides. The
Mm.
newer drugs coming out that add the glucagon component,
Mhm.
glucagon's another hormone that actually helps raise your blood sugar by itself when your blood sugar gets too low. But what they're noticing is that when they add this glucagon component, it will actually lower cholesterol, and they're not exactly sure how it works. There's some interesting things they're studying there,
Mhm.
but it also may increase metabolic rate. It helps reduce fat in the liver. So what they're doing, they're combining the GLP-1 with that GIP, which those are kind of similar compounds, and then they're putting in this glucagon. So like people may have heard of the triple G or retatrutide. Um,
Ugh.
uh, and there's a few other ones. There's GLP-1 plus glucagon. There's some new ones coming down the pipeline. So those do look like they lower cholesterol almost like a statin would.
Okay, interesting.
Whereas these GLP-1s don't by themselves.
Yes.
The way that people lower their cholesterol is like if they are eating more of that low fiber, high saturated fat type of diet, and it
Right.
helps them eat a dietary pattern. I don't want to say plant-based exactly,
Mhm.
but more plant-based, more
More plants. Yeah.
plant
Plant
forward, I would say.
forward. I love it.
Yeah.
PC.
Um, it can have that can have a major effect.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, very good to know. Um, and there was one here. Does GLP-1 decrease libido?
Yeah, so there are some patients that report this. So I
Okay.
mentioned earlier how there's this dampening in the reward center, it seems to be. So it's possible that it can over dampen things and decrease the libido.
Mhm. I've never heard that.
It's a weird side effect. Yeah, it's a weird
Yeah, interesting.
it's so what you see. So men, they will lose weight and their testosterone will come up. Some people notice a libido decrease, and then you see women and they'll be like, "Man, I feel fantastic, but my sex drive is in the tank," and you're just
Hmm.
like, "Oh, that's." So you do see it. It can
Yeah.
improve over time,
Yeah.
but is one of the side effects. If that happens, then I try to I change him from either semaglutide to tirzepatide,
Hmm.
put him on the lowest minimal effective dose
Got it.
that I can do. There's actually there. You can start getting into the different libido drugs, but
Mm.
then you're starting to give people
Yeah.
polypharmacy. But
Polypharmacy.
but
Yeah.
but the drugs work so well that it's like, no, I don't want to come off the drug. So please help me in some other different way.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into all this stuff, but there's a
Right.
little bit of testosterone. There's all sorts of other different. There's
Hmm.
actually a drug it's called an MC4 receptor, and they use it for libido in women. But actually, there's a drug, an MC4 receptor agonist that's approved for obesity,
Hmm.
for certain types of
Oh,
obesity.
wow.
So, and actually, the drug that helps with women for libido, it's associated with some weight loss because it's in the same drug class that works for obesity.
Hmm.
Anyway, kind of interesting. But
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, well, good to know. I've never heard that. So, yeah, I think kind of takeaway for the side effect conversation is that side effects, there are some out there. The ones that make the headliners are very rare. And everyone has to decide, whether or not this is the medication for them once they're on it for a sufficient amount of time. If they're experiencing side effects that are totally detrimental to their, quality of life, then it's not worth it. But I think for the vast majority of stories that I get flooding into my inbox every single day are positive ones. So everyone just kind of has to make their own decision there. So we can finish up with maybe one or two more questions and then we'll call it a
sure.
day. I so appreciate your time.
Course. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever question is there. Let's see. Someone asked about the gallbladder. I
Yeah.
talked about this before, but there may be an effect of the GLP-1 specifically on the gallbladder. Having said that, it's hard to separate it from the rapid weight loss that people get. Rapid weight loss causes a change in the mixture, the composition of the bile, which can increase the risk of forming stones in the gallbladder, which then can, if the then can get stuck in the duct, then cause a gallbladder attack. Can even cause pancreatitis if it gets in the wrong duct there. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Okay.
is
Thank you for clarifying that. Cool.
possible.
I think some of these we answered earlier. Do, 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 do. Maybe one last question. Metformin and
Yeah, we
GLP-1s.
use them very
Mhm.
commonly together. There's not any reason you can't take them together.
Yeah,
Again, always talk to your own doctor, but but there's no contraindication for that.
cool. Okay.
People are asking
Can you,
about fatigue. We do
yeah.
see fatigue. It's not reported for some reason in the studies, but
Oh,
that's like the other common side effect we see. Like people just feel tired.
mm.
All the doctors got together on our little Facebook forums that were all like talking. And people are like, oh, it must be from people not eating enough. And it's like, okay, that might make
Makes
sense. Like, okay, your calories are
sense.
so low. However, there's people that are not losing weight, which means they're not eating fewer, they're not eating less. They
Um,
know, and they're telling me they're not eating less, and they're tired. So I think there's something specific about the
mm,
drug that causes fatigue in these people. It resolves again, like other side effects over time. It can be really annoying to deal with.
sure.
Patients are like, I'm exhausted. I just want to go sit on the couch and sleep, which is the opposite of what we want people to do. But what I've noticed is that it resolves over time. Just like sometimes I have to back off the dose
Okay.
and just give them a little bit more time. But it can be annoying.
Yeah, totally. I could hear that. Yeah. And that's something that we already struggle with a lot with
Yeah,
insulin resistance and PCOS. So
yeah,
yeah, something to consider and work through and, maybe do a little bit of tweaking. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
yeah.
you. This was really, really helpful. And I hope that we cleared up a lot of, misinformation that you might hear out there and at least got, some more education out there about these medications. So I think we hear all the bad stuff. And I love to highlight some of the positive stories and the positive outcomes you can have with these medicines. So thank
Perfect.
you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, all right. And everyone go follow Dr. Nadolsky if you don't already follow him because he posts great stuff. Okay, and I will be posting this. I'm gonna edit it into a reel, so I'm not gonna post it right now, but this will be shared. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
All right, bye
Bye
everyone.
bye.